Calvary, it's wonderful to have an opportunity to bring you some additional information and updates as we've been doing. We're very encouraged about what's happening.
We had a tremendous weekend this past weekend, celebrating 60 years as a church and anticipating 60 more. Saturday, we had a great party. Thank you so much for joining us and filling the lot and the fields with a lot of fun and family. And if you weren't able to make it, we missed you. We had a great day Sunday as well, celebrating all that God has done. In this video update, we have some things being shared by Pastor Chris from St. Charles campus, an update from Pastor Brad with our financial team, and Steve and I will be back at the end of this video for a very important special update for all of Calvary Church. Thanks so much for watching. Early in August, we shared at both Calvary campuses that St. Charles campus would be exploring what it could be to become a gospel-centered church plant. And that was a decision to explore after prayer, fasting, and conversation with Chris, you, some of your leaders, the Calvary elders, and decided to go ahead with asking that question because it feels really healthy at this time. Chris, tell us about this process you're walking through with your campus.
Yeah. So after months of prayer and considerations, we came up with a process for this fall leading up until December. So December 4th is kind of the date that we earmarked on the calendar for a vote. And so we said, okay, we need to have 4 or 5 family meetings before that so that everyone at St. Charles campus can have all the information and details they need to be able to vote well. And so each family meeting has a little bit of a different topic and a different flavor, and we're kind of addressing all the pros and cons and considerations of church planting. And really what we're getting at is we're trying to determine how are we most faithfully proclaiming and demonstrating the gospel in our local context, and what makes the most sense for our local church to thrive going into the future. And so we're trying to discern that and decide, okay, is that a part of a multi-site church model, or is it maybe something a little different, part of a church planting model in which a gospel-saturated church plants a gospel-saturated church. And so it's a beautiful opportunity that we have. And so right now, you guys can just be in prayer for us as we go throughout these family meetings that are taking part every 2 or 3 weeks. And we get all the information out there to our campus so that we can lean into that December 4th vote really well.
And we'll be working on the whole church's behalf to make sure that information is available at both campuses.
Yes.
And for everybody who's a part of Calvary Church.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we want to see Jesus be known and be trusted and believed in, followed, and talked about often. And so, Chris, we are supporting you all in this journey.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Praying with you and walking with you through this process.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure to be joined by Brad Aslan, who leads the Ministry Resources team, and with that stewards our finances. And Brad, would you update us on where we are at financially at this point in the year? We're going into fourth quarter pretty soon, and that's exciting. So how are we sitting now?
Yes, there's a couple things that I want to highlight. The first of which was August was our first month as a church this year that we ended the month in the black. And so St. Charles campus has been in the black all year, covering their own expenses, own operational expenses, etc. But as a church as a whole, we were in the black for the month of August, which is really great on a couple of points. One, August is normally a pretty tough month financially. And so to see our finances hit what we projected them to be, obviously we've had a lot of transition over the year. We've had different staff members roll off. There are certain things that aligned this month that really, it was just really encouraging. So I want to say, church, thank you so much just for continuing to walk this journey with us, for your financial generosity, and just being all together in this. Because like I've said in every single one of these videos, this church thing is not just an us thing, it's an all together thing. And so I just want to say thank you for your faithfulness. And I would ask, help us continue to end the year strong. Every year I feel like we say something along those lines just because we are a nonprofit, and so how we end fourth quarter really does make a big difference for how we plan and think about budget moving forward to 2023. So anyway, thank you, church. I love you. I'm so appreciative of you. I'm very encouraged from our financial place where we are right now. Another thing I want to share is over the last couple of months, I've actually been joined by a couple of our elders. We've created like a sub-financial team to work.
Subcommittee kind of.
Yeah, we want to avoid committee language, but it is what it is. And what we're doing there is just trying to have better conversations with the board, who ultimately is responsible for the finances and overseeing the ministry of the church, but they do so in a place that's somewhat removed from the day-to-day. And so really it's been one of our goals all year, is just to create spaces for better conversations. And so it's been a joy to work with, I'm gonna name them, Joe Sturgis and Chris Ake. It's just been a joy to meet with them on a pretty regular basis. We've been joined for conversations with Gary and Susan, other members of our financial team as well. And so I just want to say publicly thank you guys, and board, thank you just for being a really good group of guys that we can have conversations and walk together in this. Yeah, and the third thing that I want to update y'all on is I just want to ask for prayer. We're moving into the fourth quarter, and with that comes budget planning for 2023. In December, we're going to be bringing a budget to the congregation to vote on for approval so that we can move forward. But there's a whole process that's connected to that project. It involves ministry planning. It involves talking about vision and who are we as a church, and how do we want to be generous with what God has provided us? What events need to happen? What ministries need to happen? Where do we allocate all of those funds and all of that? So it's a big project that takes multiple levels of conversation, multiple groups of people coming together. And so what I want to ask for you, church, is, or from you, is would you be in prayer? Would you be in prayer for myself and my team, for the other pastors, ministry leaders? Would you pray that God would give us clear direction on what events and programs and ministries we need to prioritize this next year? Would you give us, would you pray with us for the St. Charles piece of the budget conversation as we seek to be a church that potentially is planting another church? What ramifications or implications is that going to have for us financially as we seek to be generous with what we can be generous with to set them up and support them well? And then would you just be in prayer that all of us, as we have these conversations, would be united in vision and in mission together as that relates to the finances. I'm confident that God is going to continue to work. God is going to continue to provide. He is going to make our direction, our path clear. But we do need you to join in partnership with us for that journey.
Brad, thank you so much for this update. Thank you so much for watching this update video. Steve and I would like to share some special information at this time. Steve, back in July, on July 17th, Nancy Moore was with us, and she has served as our consultant, and her agency did some survey work and some focus group work. And one of the recommendations they shared with Calvary Church is that we pursue and seek an outside intentional interim to come in and help us move forward through the number of recommendations that she had brought. And I know the board's been hard at work since that day. What has the process been to get us to the point of this announcement today?
Well, we're really encouraged, and it is good news, but the steps that we went through were rather involved, and it took some time. We ended up interviewing 2 different organizations that specialize in bringing interim pastors into circumstances like ours. And that's not an easy thing to do, but we went through that, both organizations, eventually with what they understood our needs to be from Nancy Moore's survey, were then able to describe to us and bring forward people that met that requirement. We had one from one organization, one from another organization, and we had Zoom meetings with them, and they were both really good candidates. But what was exciting about it is even as we had that back to back, we understood and felt that God was really leading us to one person. And that one person that we then brought in for a personal interview. We had interviews with the elder board, with leadership and some other teams, and all came back with the same impression, that it was an absolutely God-led, Spirit-led opportunity for us.
So we're very excited to be sharing that Dr. Paul Utnage will be joining the Calvary staff as the intentional interim lead pastor beginning in October. Paul's an exciting guy. Steve, what is it that we are looking forward to?
Well, for one, we know this is a difficult season, and Paul's experience is terrific. He's had over 40 years in various situations of difficulty as well as healthy churches, and he knows what it takes to get where we need to be. Our experience with him is that he has the personality that is just one that will bring the necessary topics to mind, but in such a graceful way that you just want to hear it. And we're excited for that, because when he steps into a room, he just gives a calm. One of the references, and we did many reference checks, and he's got some wonderful background, had said that it was kind of like with Paul, it was kind of like oil and water, things just kind of calmed. And yet he brought what was necessary. So we found that to be really encouraging.
I'm really excited. I really like Paul, and I'm eager for him to get here. Now, Steve, this is a bit of a change from what we've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you explain what we've been doing compared to what we're doing now in this step forward?
It's a substantial change, but it's wonderful because God has set this all up, and you were a tremendous part of it. You and the team, Brad and the rest, but especially your efforts, because I came to you on behalf of the board asking if you would fill in as an interim lead, and that was a big step, and we didn't even know what all was entailed. And you have led through that with a tremendous amount of grace and effort. It's been taxing on you, but you have shown lots and lots of strength, and we so appreciate that. And you've brought us to the point that you've helped the congregation come together, you've helped the staff and the elders in communication roles, and that's a huge difference for all of us. And with that, that has put us in a position to where that we are now prepared for the intentional interim. Now, there's a definite difference. Intentional is the word, intentional interim. You have interims that come into situations and all they are is just a pastor that comes in and preaches. They're just filling the slot for a period of time. The intentional interim is brought in specifically for the purposes of helping the polity, which is the organization of the church, helping the structure, the staff, and all of what we need that Nancy Moore has laid out. That's what they come in to do, and that's their specialty. And Paul's been doing that all through his years. Even though he wasn't an intentional interim, he actually did that as a result, and he says this is just what he's been doing for years. So he's looking forward to the opportunity. But the distinction is then that while we have this situation going on, Dan is not going to be in any way in a less role. We're working on the details of Dan's job description, but I can tell you it will be very integral to what's going on. So we're excited about that.
And I'm excited too. I made a joke the other day that, I came to Calvary 3 years ago, took a nap on the wrong couch, and woke up as a leading pastor. And I love my role, but I am excited to have someone with the experience and the wisdom that Paul brings, and very excited to focus in specific ways that I believe my person and my gifting will serve Calvary Church incredibly well moving forward as part of this new team.
And something to add to that too, be sure and understand the interim is a very specific time frame. How long is that? Whenever we get to the point that we believe that we have made the steps forward that we need, then Nancy Moore and her organization come back in and do a recheck. If they're satisfied where we need to be, then the real search for the lead pastor goes on. The interim stays with until the lead pastor comes in, and there's steps amongst that, which obviously a search team has to go through that. Those people are vetted by Nancy Moore. Then the board has to interview, and if the board's good and the board votes, then the person comes in to candidate in person right here at Calvary, and you get to see and hear and experience, and then you, the congregation, then get to vote on whether this next person is the right person. But all of that only occurs once we go through this time frame, which started with Dan and his terrific sense of stepping up to the plate in tough times. And then this next step, which we're now in, which is where you have the intentional interim lead who is moving us forward and getting us to where we need to be in the right way. And then we finally will get to the point where we want to be. Well, we also are excited to know that with Paul, he's going to be coming in here and he's going to be meeting with us on October 8th and 9th, which is 2 weeks from this time frame. So we want you to be here if you can. He will be preaching in all three services, Saturday and Sunday, and you'll also have an opportunity to have a brief get to know him or at least meet him. And then he'll be back full time later in October. In the meanwhile, we want to make sure that you understand, though, this is not a replacement for someone up on stage. This person has multiple roles throughout the organization, including preaching, but we will maintain and consistently continue the teaching team concept because we believe that's the best way to really have the gospel brought forward. And so you'll see Dan on stage regularly, you'll see Brad on rotation, and you'll also see Dr. Paul on rotation. So don't be looking for someone to replace somebody, but just looking to be added into that team. And that's what we see the strength as part of what's going on.
Steve, thank you so much for sharing this update. And church, thank you so much for taking time to be aware of what's going on. We love you.
Yes.
Continue to pray with us, even as we pray for you. And we all should be in prayer for Dr. Paul and his wife Brenda as they make a transition into the area. Go in peace.